associated with the public health emergency involving COVID-19. This ordinary meeting of Council will be available to view via live stream on Council's website and will be available for others to watch at a later time. I'd like to acknowledge the Guugialangi people who are the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay respect to their elders, both past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians who may be listening or watching our meeting this morning. I note all councillors are present. Of course, our staff is here, the CEO is here, and the limited staff that we require in the room. Any conflicts of interest, councillors? Nothing's been brought forward today. We have no mayoral minutes. Takes us to the confirmation of the minutes. We've got the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on Tuesday, 25th of May 21. If I can have a mover, please. Councillor Scomerson, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Anyone against or any changes? No comments. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. The minutes of the special meeting held on Tuesday, 8th of June 21. A mover, please. Councillor Scomerson. I'm happy to second that one. Anyone against or any comments? Put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. The minutes of the special meeting held on Tuesday, 15th of June 21. A mover for that one. Councillor McEwen. Seconded by Councillor Scomerson. Any comments? Put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. That's the minutes out the way. That takes us to the agenda items as listed. And of course, the first one we have today is the reconfiguration of a lot 1 into 2 residential lots at 349 Mowbray River Road, Mowbray. And the recommendation is quite extensive there. We'll take that one as read. If there's a mover for this one, please. Councillor Zamataro, seconded by Councillor Nolly. Councillor Zamataro, would you like to speak to it?
Oh, look, I'd like to commend the staff on their profession in the report. It's a very thorough report, and also commend them on their acknowledgement of the importance of preserving the town plan and how crucial it is for the future of the Douglas Shire.
Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Any further comments from councillors?
I'd like to make one quick comment.
Yes.
I commend the staff on such a great report, but I do believe that we have so many pockets around the Shire where, because of the planning code has changed, we have land that's you can't use. For instance, this block of land here, all you can do is put a horse on it, unless you have a hobby farm. So I think it's something that we need to look into with our planning area to see if there's something we can do with these plots of land, because we have limited housing at the moment in Mosman, in the Shire, so where these blocks of lands can be utilised for building. So I just like just to make a note that there's something that we should need to look into in the Shire, because the state town plan is very strongly for South East Queensland, but our circumstances this way has changed because of COVID, and I think it's something we should need to look at.
Thank you. Councillor Nolan.
Thank you. Well, with this information that Councillor Scomerson has just given, I'd like perhaps a comment from the staff about the thought process that there is limited housing in the Shire. My understanding, we have Craiglee, we have Wonga, we have Kuya, potentially in Mosman as well. Is there any, off the top of your head, is there any idea about how many potential house sites we have at the moment?
I'd have to take that on notice.
Yeah.
Councillor Nolly probably would be a good thing for the team leader planning to take councillors through a workshop with.
Yep.
Okay. There certainly are a number of lots being built at the moment, and Craiglee is a good example of that. There's certainly other areas. Port Douglas has a new development of 17 lots, which seems to be selling quite well. There's some others at Wonga, but probably really a good workshop item for the planners to take council through.
Okay, thank you. I'd also like to say my strong belief is that part of the appeal and uniqueness of Douglas has been our clever planning schemes that have been adopted over the years. I will always support the current scheme because it's ingenious, holistic approach for the good of Douglas, to preserve what we have. Later in the meeting, we have a report from the TPDD which outlines reasons tourists come to Douglas. And I quote, "It's tree-lined avenues, welcoming visitors to the tropics, relaxed coastal atmosphere, and a seaside rainforest villages." Now that's achieved principally through the planning scheme, in my opinion. So this is my shout out, stick to what we have now planned and don't go fucking about with changes. Thank you.
I'd like to say something, yes. Also, originally when that was first going to come to council, I was in favour of it. It was pulled from the last meeting and we had a very extensive workshop for the council staff to explain why if we allowed that one to go, we'd probably be in big trouble. I think that, I understand why we can't do it now, that's fine, but I do think that we have to have a look at this planning scheme in workshops and just have a look to see if there are any areas we can allow sensible development. We'll just discuss it and talk about it.
Thank you. Yeah. I'd just like to, first of all, thank the applicant for indulging us in adjourning this item until today, as there was some pertinent questions that councillors wish to ask staff about with this application. This unfortunately is one of those frustrating applications that on face value looks logical and by all accounts should be, but unfortunately, whilst this is the case, the underlying issues that come about from our own current planning scheme and the state's regional scheme creates boundaries that even us as councillors could have trouble justifying if we were to attempt to override the plan as an approved application such as this. And I personally believe that this part of the scheme does need to be looked at, and cases such as this individual application, I believe has merit to be approved. But the tools that are used currently to protect our rural lands, I believe, in this particular case, are probably irrelevant because, this particular block, it's trying to protect something that's not even present at the moment. Basically, it's on the wrong side of the map. None of us want to see our large rural blocks broken apart, so we lose the agriculture areas that we do need. But blocks such as this one are not big enough for rural farming, but they're too small for rural living, or too big for rural living, I should say. So they fall through the crack and often become untenable at both to do either. So I feel that for the applicant, and whilst I don't believe we can approve this application currently, I know that I personally agree with Councillor Thomas and Councillor McEwen that we should be working in the background to see a solution for landowners of particular blocks like this one that we can do something about in the future. Councillor Samatara, would you like to make any closing remarks?
No.
All right, we'll put that to the vote
I'd
then.
like to say something if I may, please.
Well, we'll take the standing orders, Councillor Noel. You had your chance to debate at the time.
If you look at standing orders 11.2, it actually does give me a chance to say something else if I'm allowed.
Well, we'll look at it. Speaking to the motions and amendments, each councillor has one turn to talk, and the only person who has a second chance is the person making the closing argument, Councillor Noel.
Yep.
Which point is it you are making, Logan?
11.2, I believe it is.
The Chair will manage the debate by allowing the councillors who propose the motion the option of speaking first on the motion. The Chair will then call on other councillors who wishes to speak against the motion, and then alternatively for against and for the motion is available until all councillors who wish to speak have had the opportunity. You had your opportunity when you spoke. Okay, it does further on, it does say that each councillor shall have one speech until the end of the debate, and therefore the closing person can make their argument, which Councillor Samatara hasn't made an argument for the closing, so we will put it to the vote,
It also
please.
does say that the Mayor may allow, or the Chair may allow further discussion on important issues.
Well, it's not exactly a drastically important issue, Councillor Noel. You've had
It
to
is
say
if
about
we are
what you wish.
going
We'll put it to the
to
vote, please. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Application for permanent road closure over part of unnamed road reserve off Rasmussen Road, Cassowary, adjoining lots 42, 43 and 45 on SP 155094. The recommendation, of course, is that Council delegates authority to the Chief Executive Officer in accordance with Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to execute a Form Part C as Road Manager, advising the Department of Resources, DOR, that Council cannot authorise proposed permanent road closure of part of an unnamed road reserve off Rasmussen Road, Cassowary, adjoining lot 42, 43, 45 on SP 155094, identified by the locality map attached to this report. However, to request the DOR to consider the application under the Land Act 1994 in relation to this matter, advises DOR that it has no objections to the application for permanent road closure over unnamed road reserve off Rasmussen Road, Cassowary, adjoining lots 42, 43 and 45 on SP 155094, and delegates authority to the Chief Executive Officer in accordance with Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to finalise all matters associated with this application. Is there a mover, please? Councillor Stomazon, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Councillor Stomazon, would you like to speak to it?
No, it's all good.
Any other councillor wish to speak against it? Any other comments from councillors? Okay, with that then we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Takes us to 5.3, the registration of standard terms for trustee leases. The recommendation is that council resolves to register with the Department of Resources standard terms documents for leasing trustee reserves and or buildings, and delegates authority to the Chief Executive Officer in accordance with Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to finalise all matters associated with this matter. Is there a mover, please? Councillor McEwen. Seconded by Councillor Stomazon. Councillor McEwen, would you like to speak to it?
No, thank you. It's straightforward.
Anyone wish to speak against? No. Any comments from councillors?
Oh, sorry. I just one question. This schedule is this given to people that are leasing the properties of the council?
Through the mayor, yes, it is.
It is. So, and this is what, when we have a lease with these organisations, is this like a contract? This is what we go by?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to make couple comments on this. If this is what we give to the people that are leasing properties of us, we need to closely look at some of these, because there are some people that we lease properties to are not abiding by this contract. So unless we start looking at this a lot closer, we're going to get ourselves in a lot of trouble. That's
I think that's something we should take on notice and bring up at a workshop.
Yes, I think there is, yes.
Okay.
So I'd like to discuss this in the workshop.
Councillor Nolly?
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, make sure I've understood everything correctly. Basically, what we're doing is we just simply standardise it across the board, all the leases, more or less. Is that it? That's what it is?
Through the mayor, we did have an existing standard term for a bit, that were a bit loose.
Yeah.
We've tightened up the clauses, so the responsibilities are but now back with the leasee. And it also negates using the government standard terms and conditions. So all those conditions, as well as their own updated conditions, are within one document. So there is no argument what the responsibilities are of the trustee leasee.
Okay, that's the right. Thank you.
Any other comments from councillors? Yeah, Councillor Thompson, I believe that's some of the things that have been picked up, and that's what the staff are doing this work so that we can refine all this and bring this back up to where it should be. All right, so we'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? And that's carried. Takes us to 5.4, which is revoke a busking general policy. The recommendation is the council revokes the busking general policy. Is there a mover for that one, please? I'm happy to move it. Seconder, Councillor Zamataro. Of course, this is basically taking away the busking general policy is covered under our local laws anyway. The report's very explanatory in the sense that, you know, a lot of the areas we have in Douglas just aren't suitable for busking anyway. So, you know, they do it on private land, which doesn't involve us. So, of course, the bylaws look after that. So I have no issue with that. Anyone wish to speak against? Any other comments from councillors? Okay, we'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 5.5. Thank you. Small Business Friendly Council's charter. The recommendation is that council agrees to join the Queensland Government's Small Business Friendly Councils initiative and signs the Small Business Friendly Council's charter and delegates authority under section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to deal with any matters arising from the implementation of this charter. Do we have a mover for this one? Councillor Stomerton, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Councillor Stomerton, would you like to speak to it?
I think this is a great idea for the council to get involved in. You know, the council does a lot for small businesses in the Shire, but I think this is even better and to recognise the small businesses and be part of this charter.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against? No? Any comments from councillors?
Questions, anything?
Thank you.
So am I correct in saying this is kind of not dissimilar to what council does for the reef-guarding councils or the Power Cities Council, but for small businesses, that kind of organisation, group organisation?
Yep, through the mayor, that's correct.
Yeah.
Wonderful. There's no other comments. We'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Okay, that takes us to 5.6. Tourism Port Douglas Daintree KPI Strategies 2021. The council receives and notes the following three reports required under the Resource and Performance Agreement with Tourism Port Douglas Daintree TPDD, dated 1 July 2020 to 30 June 21 between TPDD and Douglas Shire Council. One being Tourism Port Douglas Daintree Destination Tourism Plan 2025 draft. Two being Tourism Port Douglas Daintree Event Strategy 2025. And three is the Tourism Port Douglas Daintree Brand Review 2021. We have a mover for that one, please. Councillor Nolly, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Zamataro. Councillor Nolly, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to say thank you to TPDD. Once again, you have demonstrated how important you are to Douglas. The change in marketing strategy, basically that was demonstrated by every tourism hotspot in Australia because of what COVID brought about. But the difference with TPDD is the success that they have achieved. It's great work. There are a few interesting points in the attached documents. And I think it's well worth the read for anyone who can sit down and have a look at it. We are being pointed out as the world's leading sustainable destination, and TPDD are really pushing that. So it's great to see. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any comments from councillors?
It's a great report that they've put together, and during the hard times we've had with COVID, I think they've done well with their reportings.
Thank you.
I just want to concur with Councillor Nolan, but certainly it's a great report and they're doing a good job.
I have to say the same. I'm very, very pleased and impressed that we've set them a challenge and they've accomplished that challenge and they've done it very well. I do recommend everyone to have a read of these documents. It gives us now a proper direction, shows us our weaknesses, shows us our strengths, shows us the things we can do to move forward and how we can do it effectively. And I think it's an absolute asset for this Shire that this work has now been completed, and I look forward to seeing what they do with it in the future. Councillor Nolan, do you have any closing remarks?
No, thank you.
With that, we'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour? And that's carried. All right, 5.7. Tourism Port Douglas Daintree Resource and Performance Agreement 21 to 24. The recommendation is the council resolves to enter into a resource and performance agreement with Tourism Port Douglas Daintree as a specialist service provider for the destination marketing and management under S235B of the Local Government Regulations 2012 for the financial years 1 July 21 to 30 June 24. Contracted for the amounts of 400,000 exclusive GST in 21-22, 450,000 exclusive of GST year 22-23, and 500,000 exclusive of GST in 23-24. Delegates authority under Section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to finalise the minor amendments and execute the resource and performance agreement. Have a mover for that one, please. I'm happy to move that one. Seconded by?
Yes.
Councillor McEwen. I would be very short and sweet with this one. I know we put the pressure on them last year, with COVID and everything that was happening at that time, that we had, very limited funds ourselves. We didn't know what direction we were going. We were uncharted. They came up with the goods of giving us these fantastic documents that we just discussed previously. And now I think it's the right thing to do to give them the funds that they have asked for. This is the amount they came to us and they requested, and we have looking at agreeing to those figures. And I think that they justifully deserve that to make the recommendations in their other documents come to fruition. So I'm happy to support it. Anyone against it?
I'd like to have a discussion, if you don't mind, or not really against it.
Well, there's no one against it, then yes, Councillor Nolan.
Thank you. So in the documents, TPDD has provided council with a 5-point action plan. Council has had a rundown of that action plan and how TPD intends to achieve success in all these 5 areas. But the 5-point plan is based on, the 5-point plan is based on demonstrated research and data as to what is essential for Douglas. So that's all in there. However, their success is dependent on 4-year resource funding, not 3, as the recommended one. They have provided reasonings in the tables as to why 4 years are necessary and how 3 wouldn't be sufficient. And councils have also been provided with a benchmarking snapshot of their successes, so councils are very aware of their successes. We have been demonstrated an incredible dollar ratio return for DSC annually, so it's outstanding. So TPDD is outstanding value for money. I think we need to discuss giving them a 4-year agreement, which would align to their demonstrated in those documents, demonstrated 4-year plans. And the reason is that they'll be able to leverage more income from other sources as we recover from COVID, and that kicks in more effectively. Plus, it gives them more effective planning processes for their 4 years plan. So I'd like to open up this discussion. And my suggestion, and just to finish off if you like, would be just to give it the same 500,000 at the end. That's 4 years down the track, so it doesn't interfere with any long-term financial planning. It's not in this budget. It's not in the next budget. It's in the 4th budget. So, and that is it aligns to what they actually really require.
So are you putting forward a amendment to this motion, or?
Well, I'd like to discuss it, because the thing is, if there's absolutely no support for this idea, no, I won't put forward an amendment, but I think we should at least have a bit of a discussion about this.
Okay, well, if that's the case, I believe we should move to other councillors for comments before we can go back to you then, if that's the case, for a possible amendment. But I mean, I do believe from the workshop, the comments that were made is that, we would be signing up the next council to something that they're not agreeing to or could possibly not agree to. I think 3 years is certainly, we're showing that we are supportive of them. We've given them the next 3 years worth, and I'm quite sure that the next council will make their decision based on what they believe possible at that time. That's my opinion of it.
If I recall correctly, that's what they asked for, wasn't it? 3 years.
No.
No, they asked for 4. Okay.
Councillor Scommers,
So
did you have a point?
the first year, next financial year, you're saying that, they will pay them 350.
Keep the first as is, and the last year, keep it at 500.
So we're going to pay them 500 in 2 years.
In
For 2 years.
Yes.
So I think what you're saying, Councillor Nolly, is to add that to 500,000 inclusive GST for years 2024 to 2025.
Yes, that is
which will be
correct.
the next term of council.
Yes, that is correct.
Well,
Would you like to say something?
yeah, I didn't get in quick enough because I don't support this. Okay, and the reason I don't support this, and it's not, they do a great job, but last year we gave them $250,000 because of COVID and budget restraints. We're still under budget restraints. We haven't won lotto. So they do a fantastic job. We have 2 TITO positions that work closely with them. So it's not that they're on their own. They do work with other tourist organisations. They get funding through other means as well. I think while our budget is tight, we need to look at this sensibly. We're not taking anything away from them. And I believe that, we gave them 250 last year. I think as increments of 50,000, I'd like to see it to go up to 50,000 again this year for 300,000. They achieved a lot last year on the 250, and I think they'll achieve it the same, if not more, on the 300. And I just think we really have to seriously think about our budget. And I will not have the ratepayers of this shire have to pay for something that they don't fully benefit from. And I don't think they fully benefit from TPDD. The tourists do, and it happens over and over again. The tourists benefit, but the ratepayers pay for it.
I'm just going to move that we release ourselves from standing orders. If there's a seconder for that, please, to move out of standing orders, just so we can have a more open discussion about this.
Yeah.
Councillor Nolan, all those in favour? Okay, so at least we're released from the standing orders. I understand where you're coming from, Councillor, but the issue I have is that 80% of our employment is based on tourism.
Yeah.
So saying the ratepayers aren't going to benefit from this, I don't think is quite correct. I do believe that, they have shown, which is the documents that they were asked for, what they need to do and how they need to do it. And I think we are at a place now where we need to start planning for, especially next year with international borders, possibly looking at opening later next year, that we've got this marketing in place. I note that Mareeba Shire Council just put $750,000 into their tourism body to start advertising. And I think that if we're not on the front foot now, we will be too late.
Yeah, I understand that, totally agree with that. But we don't have enough budget.
Councillor Nolan?
Yeah, look, so if you look at page 106 of the agenda, which is to do with the previous item, TPDD does actually very quickly comment that they were under-resourced during this year, and they have managed, but I think that's the operative word, they have managed this year with the funding resources, but they can't thrive with this amount continuing, essentially. And I think that's the difference. Yes, they've managed this year, like everyone can do sometimes. You try your belt for a year, but sometimes you just cannot continue. And that's kind of what's pointed out on that page 106.
And I will add that TPDD have also, through this experience, have now learned how to do grant writing. They are going to be looking for their own funds as well. They have started to do that. This last year was an experience for them, and I know, particularly with the staff working with them, they are far more educated to what we believe they should be doing. I don't believe that we're just willy-nilly throwing $500,000 to just advertising. We have got plans in place now. We've got actual processes that can be completed, and I think it's worth giving them the opportunity to prove themselves. Of course, these are KPIs. This 400,000. Correct me if I'm wrong. If it's not met in their new KPIs, they would be in breach of their contract, and therefore, we could reassess their following contract as far as what they get for the following years. So it's the next step in growing our tourism and in different directions as well as the current directions, and I think it's well worth supporting at this stage. Councillor Samataro, have you got comments?
Look, I think this report highlights how important TPDD is to the Shire. I don't agree. I think it does. The ratepayers do benefit, but it gives, I think, what have we got? 2,500 people employed in the tourism industry in the Shire, so I think they will benefit greatly from TPDD, and we need to keep them going.
I'm not saying not keeping them going. I support what they do, and I think they do a good job. What I'm saying is our budget, our bottom line budget. That's all I'm saying. Against what they do, or, they do a great job. Yes, I support the Shire with tourism. That's it. But I'm just talking about our bottom lines.
Well, they contribute to the budgets of 2,500 people that work in the industry. So.
Without that tourism, we don't get those rateable incomes. And I know with more further advertising, it means more businesses grow, which means our baseline grows. So it does in ways affect. So I think you know, totally with you. I understand exactly where you're coming from, and that was my biggest concern last year with that. But I believe that with these documents, you know, we have got a direction to head, and I think it's worth taking that opportunity to run with this, especially the first one, and, you know, make them meet their KPIs again.
Yeah.
Councillor Nolan?
Thank you. Well, look, you know, even yourself, Councillor Kerr, have said that if they don't meet their KPIs, that we can revisit their contract. So why not go for the 4 years? Why not give them at least security on that? That's what they really need to hit these 5 points. And, you know, if they don't, well, then you yourself said that we can revisit their contract. What's the problem?
I'm not prepared to sign up the next term of council for what they want. They can make their
term of
decision.
council.
It covers them for the first term, and those councillors can make that decision when they get there. Anything can happen between now and 5 years. All right, if, I mean, you wouldn't be supporting getting an extra year on top of it, no? No, so it won't be worth going to that page. So if we return back to our standing orders, if we could please. I'll move that, seconded to move back to standing orders. Councillor McEwen, all those in favour? And that's carried. Okay, so with that, we shall put it to the vote. All those in favour of supporting? That's Councillor Zamatara, Councillor Nola, Councillor Kerr, Councillor McEwen. Those against? Councillor Scomerson. All right, so motion passes. Five point eight, Douglas Chamber of Commerce Amendment to Resource and Performance Agreement. The recommendation is the council resolves to approve the request to amend the Douglas Chamber of Commerce current Resource and Performance Agreement to extend the expiry date by 3 months from June 30 to 30 September. And delegates authority under section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the Chief Executive Officer to finalise all matters in relation to the above agreement. We're moving for that one. Yep, Councillor McEwen. Seconded by Councillor Scomerson. Councillor McEwen, did you wish to say anything?
Not much. We discussed that, and I can't see any issues with extending that.
Anyone against? No. Any further comments from councillors?
I just want comment. Have we given them the money yet?
Through the mayor, they have received three quarters worth of the funding, so they receive it in 3 monthly instalments.
Yeah.
We have been invoiced for the final instalment, just yet to pay it.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I think it's worth noting that they started late with their agreement because of their AGM when it fell, so they're just behind a little bit. So this just puts them in line for that as far as we're concerned. With that, we'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Five point nine, Council Grant Program 2019 to 20, the GBR Legacy variance in the project. The recommendation is, go back again, that Council approves a variation to GBR Legacy Grant Funding Agreement to allow a change of project from Bio Rock Community Reef Restoration Project to Humpback Whale Community Research Project, and to delegate authority under section 257 of the Local Government Act 2009 to the CEO to finalise all matters in relation to this agreement. Do you have a mover for that one, please? Yep, Councillor Zamatara. I'm happy to second that one. Councillor Zamatara, did you wish to say anything?
No.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any other comments from councillors?
We discussed this in the workshop one hour. I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to sit here nice and calmly and we'll all vote for this one.
So it was, you know, they put an application in for a grant.
No, it's not that I don't agree.
They, unfortunately, they couldn't fulfil the grant application because of other reasons outside their own, so they've come back to us with another idea. I think it's still an absolutely wonderful project, so the money's been allocated, so we may as well give it to them and let them fulfil this wonderful new project. We'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, and that's carried unanimously. .10 Enterprise Risk Management Policy Framework and Corporate Risk Register. The recommendation is the council adopts the enterprise risk management policy and adopts the enterprise risk management risk framework and guideline and endorse the corporate risk register. Is there a mover for that one, please? Councillor Scomerson, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Councillor Scomerson, wish to speak to it?
Well done, good work, and I think these are necessary for organisation, so well done.
Absolutely. Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comments from councillors? All right, we'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you for all the work you did with that one. 5.11, we've got the procurement general policy. The recommendation is the council adopts the procurement general policy for the 21-22 financial year. We have a mover for that one. Councillor Scomerson, seconded by Councillor McEwen, got in there. Councillor Scomerson, any comments?
No, it's fine.
Anyone wish to speak against? No other comments from councillors? No, a nice easy one to get through. Again, it's one of those ones that we just need to do, and it's just bringing it up to date, which is great. So with that, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. .12, principal place of residence policy. The recommendation is the council adopts the principal place of residency policy. We'll move it for that one. Councillor Scomerson, I'm happy to second that one. Councillor Scomerson, wishes to say anything?
No, I think it's a good policy that has been put into place, and I think it's fair across the board for everyone that lives in the Shire.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comments from councillors? Councillor Noel?
Yeah, thank you. Look, I think it's in the best interest of the public that Ms. Colleen has a chance to explain this a little bit, because it is a new policy as opposed to readopting an old one. And I think it would be just a good opportunity. If that's okay?
Through the Mayor. Yes, this change is one of the changes that came about from our rates model review that was conducted by the Mead Perry Group. Mead Perry Group was engaged by council as an independent consultant company to assist with this review and conducted a thorough analysis of council's general rate structure and provided various alternatives, and this is one of the options that was taken up by council. Part of the background to the decision, council's financial assistance grant funding is determined based on its census population base in the Shire, which is currently around 12,400 people. Douglas Shire has around 9,300 ratepayers, but during a normal year, we have approximately 443,000 overnight tourists and 264,000 day tourists that visit the Shire and make use of our infrastructure. Even though the funding doesn't take this massive additional burden into consideration. So it's really obvious when you look at those statistics why we really struggle with the funding that we do have and the rate base that we have to maintain that service. Many properties that are not ratepayers' principal place of residency are short-term rental properties or holiday let. Sometimes there are tax concessions for the owner. Many of them are used by tourists who require this council's continued spend on infrastructure. Many are not occupied by ratepayers or local residents who count towards the grant funding. The decision to include new rating categories for non-principal place of residency is quite common practice. There are a number of councils, for example, Gold Coast, Livingston, Noosa, Scenic Rim, and others that have many varied non-principal place of residency categories to address this situation. I think Noosa is quite similar to our Shire. And yeah, so that's basically the reason why we've had an increase in the minimum rating charge for non-principal place of residence. Instead of just having an across-the-board lift that we had in our forecast, we have had a lift, but not as much across the board. We've had a bit more of a targeted approach. So that's good. background.
Thank you. Any further comments from councillors? All right, we'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. 5.13 QAO Interim Audit Management Letter 2021. The recommendation is the council notes the observation contained within the Douglas Shire Council Interim Management Report to the Mayor Observation Report from the Queensland Audit Office 20 to 21 financial year. And I'm happy to move that one. Do you have a seconder for it? Thank you, Councillor Thomason. Attached, again, it's wonderful to see that, the things that have been picked up very quickly. We've got green dots for everything, which, to us is a wonderful thing when we see green dots. The issues, again, were picked up and they were fixed immediately, which is fantastic. So great job by the staff. Thank you very much. It's all I can say on behalf of myself, and I'm sure the councillors would think the same way, that these are the sorts of reports that we're getting from the QAO. Anyone wish to speak against? Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Zamatari.
I have a question. I'm just, page 267, the management response states that the risk management brief was presented to the audit committee on the 26th of February. And this was the full committee. It says it wasn't presented to the council, it was presented in a hard copy, which I haven't seen in a hard copy. I'm just wondering, because it was discussed, the main interest being the Daintree Ferry, it was quite an important issue that we've been discussing since then. I'm just wondering why it wasn't presented to the council, why we weren't given the opportunity to receive this report.
Through the Mayor, yes, we've taken on board the fact that the report register wasn't, and policy wasn't tabled during the financial year, and basically that was as a result of everything else that went on in that year, like COVID. We definitely have addressed the risks on many levels with council, specifically with the ferry. Our management team meetings, we discuss our risks constantly, but we just basically hadn't tabled the report, and the report is actually has actually just gone up previously, so it's gone up to the July of this meeting. So it was just a timing thing really, that it hadn't got up by June, but there were a lot of reports and things that I think governance were focused on getting up before this one. There is continued focus on the risk register, and the management team have actually divided up all of the risks amongst the various staff to give ownership, and we're all working on them. I've worked on 2 of them myself so far. So what we've presented today is going to come back to you soon after a full review as well. So it's a constant evolving process, I guess, with risks. Particularly, I know in my own section, there's been a lot of work done on the cyber risk, data breach side of things, training, new systems put in place, some of which have come out of the QAO report and things that we found there. We're looking at new systems for bank files and things like that. So there's a lot of work being done in that area.
So it is going to come to council, also?
Yeah, it's basically just, was the last report, wasn't it?
Sorry, the reason I asked was it's related to Daintree Ferry, that paragraph, and that's sort of a little too late for any discussion about the Daintree Ferry.
I have a question that builds on that. Perhaps I can, is it okay for
Councillor Nolan, yes.
Okay. So I need some clarity around this also, because in February, the Mayor, it says by a Queensland Audit Office, and I'll read out exactly what they said. The risk management policy and register was presented to the audit committee on Saturday, the 20th of February. This was a workshop for the full committee, chair, external member, mayor, and deputy mayor. It was presented in a hard copy. At this workshop, the risk register, which existed, we just adopted the new policy, it has existed, not as if it hasn't existed, was discussed. The main emphasis being the Daintree Ferry. Okay, now, with all this happening in February, I need clarity about why the contentiousness of the ferry that's gone on. After February, we went through a tender process, we awarded a tender, we bought a ferry, and yet this was never referred to in any discussion with councillors. And I need to understand the thought process about not bringing this up. So, yeah, that's what I would like to
Ms.
understand.
Colleen,
The question's actually to you two, actually.
well, I can tell you that from my recollection of that workshop, there certainly wasn't a detailed discussion of, it was brought up that the Daintree ferry was considered a risk
Yes,
because of the position that we had not signed a contract as yet.
yes,
That's it.
it's a risk, yet going into buying the ferry and awarding a new tender, risk analysis was never done. Why not? This is a concern for me.
Councillor Noel, you're fully aware why not. There was time constraints as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Colleen, did you have something that you?
I just through the mayor, just wanted to add that basically, we'd received this report back from QAO to ask why the risk register hadn't gone up to council. We were pointing out the fact that we've now appointed an audit committee, and part of onboarding that audit committee was to put everything in front of them so that's all this is in context to. It's not specific to a different discussion about the ferry that wasn't held with councillors. It's just showing them all the
It
risks.
highlights the risk around the ferry.
I think everybody that followed any newspaper or watched any council meeting understood there was a risk. It was quite open and blatant. All right, so if there's no other comments, we'll put that to the vote then. All those in favour? And that's carried. Okay, that finishes those items. So we've got a notice of motion. Councillor Zamataro, would you like to read your notice of motion?
My notice of motion moves that council, in the interest of transparency, pass a resolution that all meetings, including workshops, be open to the public unless closed for one of the reasons specified in the local government regulations. I think I've got this right, 254J, closed meeting.
And is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nolly? Councillor Roy, Zamataro, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, by having closed workshops, all discussion is confidential. By definition, these are not meetings, but it's a platform where most discussion happens. So, majority of the time when the matter goes to an official meeting for a decision has already been made. This also means that all discussions are confidential, so a councillor can be reported and charged for discussing the workshop content in an open meeting or even outside of it. That means the public are denied the opportunity to listen to the debate, and that makes it difficult when our constituents want to talk to us about anything controversial. The voting rate-paying public don't want to be told, I can't talk about it. Having open workshops would also reduce the need to employ consultants before knowing what the public prefers. Open workshops would inform the public about the costs involved to ratepayers regarding the particular consultation they're being asked their opinion on. The thing I always hear after the consultation process is over, well, we were not told how much this was going to cost or where it was going to be built. My vote would have been different if I'd known this information. So in the interest of transparency, I'm moving that all workshops be open to the public, except in those instances mentioned in the local government regulations.
Anyone wish to speak against?
Yeah, I would like to speak against this motion. Meetings to be made public. So are you referring to all meetings? Are you referring to meetings with the CEO and staff? Are you referring to meetings with the CEO and councillors? Meetings with state and federal members? Do I need to clarify the public or not? And when I meet with the CEO, if I meet with you, Councillor Zamataro, what about meetings when the public wants to come and discuss issues with the CEO? I'm not sure they'll be too happy if they have to invite the public along to those meetings. I'm not too sure where this ends. You know, are we talking about all meetings within the council or just ones with councillors? The workshops that we have are informal briefing sessions that allow councillors and staff the time to be able to discuss matters before it comes to an ordinary monthly meeting. No decisions are made in a workshop. This is where we can have a robust discussion and make our point on why we do not agree with what is put forward to us or work together to get a better solution. This is where we allow members of the public to have deputations with councillors. This is where we can take time out and go on a field trip to get a better idea of issues that are occurring in the Shire. Are you suggesting that we invite the public to our outings? If we allow the workshops to be open to the public, there is a possibility that we will not get all the information that we get now, and staff may be reluctant to present to us the full story, as they do not want to be in a position that they can be targeted on social media for doing their job by certain members and groups of this community. Surely you don't want that. Interest of transparency. This is your second term as a councillor, and if you feel strongly about transparency, why did you not raise this in your previous term? Did you have an issue with transparency then? As a member of the public, I did. The community would have been privy to the reason on why the previous council wanted to buy the block of land north of the river, and why they strongly advocated the Qantas carbon credit, which turned out to be nothing but a fiasco. So to question transparency with this council, I find that totally insulting. As I will make it clear again, I'm not affiliated with any groups or members with hidden agendas. I'm here for one purpose only, and that is to work for the community as we all should be doing. I'm the first person in workshops that will rant and rave if I don't believe there's transparency in what is discussed. So to imply that this is an issue with transparency, I take offence to that, and I believe staff would as well. As a councillor, I do not believe workshops should be open to the public, because this is the time we need to be able to question staff on important issues before it comes to an ordinary meeting. This is the time where we can inform staff that we do not agree, or more information is needed before a decision is made. As you're aware, some workshops can be very heated and things do get said, and I'm sure, Councillor Zamatara, that some things that you have said would not be accepted by the public. For a councillor to bring a motion on transparency to the table, I put to you, Councillor Zamatara, what are your issues that you are having with this council on transparency? I would like to make it public today on the issues that you are having with meetings and workshops.
Anyone wish to speak for the motion?
Yeah,
Councillor Nolan?
thank you. So I'm actually quite ecstatic about this motion. I think it's essential that the public be given the opportunity to hear the machinations of council and how it works, how councillors can ask questions, offer suggestions, and how it's possible to contribute. You know, as a councillor, quite seasoned at the moment, as experience in any job, I suppose, you learn things, and I'm learning just about the importance of opening up how the machinations of council work to the public. And it's just assurance for the public that the interests of council have been upheld. You know, we all agree as councillors about the utmost importance of transparency and openness, and it shouldn't really even be a debate and motion, I don't think. I think it should just be unanimous and agreed upon wholeheartedly. Most of the public probably would never have heard of Balcara. Balcara was the report or the investigation report into that deals with corruption in council. And Balcara actually encourages this type of move by councils. In fact, about a year ago, items that were allowed to go into closed sessions were reduced. So that's why, at the moment, as an example, you can't award contract in a closed session. So this kind of really aligned with that type of reforms that have been introduced by Balcara. And, you know, it actually probably wouldn't surprise if this became legislation, open workshops to the public. It wouldn't surprise me. That would be one of the next steps. So, yeah, I'm quite happy for this. I think it's fantastic. I love for the public to see the machinations, how we do debate, because it really is, when we come to meetings, the debating thought process is probably already, for the most part, finished, and I think it's a great idea. It's good for everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to speak against it. Councillor Zamatara, without having that information that you've just said there, I would be, or I am happy to bring it up at a workshop and discuss it further, once again, with more information. But I contacted the LGAQ because that was a matter that was raised by the previous Queensland government. And I have a copy of a letter here on the 6th of February 2020 from LGAQ to the Director General, Department of Local Government, Racing and Multicultural Affairs, where on behalf of the 77 local governments, it says here that they strongly oppose the proposed regulation amendments regarding informal meetings, which I had
confirmation from them that that includes workshops. So they've fought very hard on behalf of all the local councils so that that would not happen. So I don't know why we should be different to any other council. I think a lot of things we say in the workshops could not go out to the public. Yeah, we have a lot of robust conversations, we disagree. And I think that a lot of information that would come from staff just wouldn't be brought up. So we wouldn't be fully informed. I just don't think we should be the one to change the way things happen. I'm happy with their transparency.
I would like to start by saying that transparency is absolutely something that I've committed to and something that I believe this council prides itself in. It disappoints me that as being a fellow councillor, you've been present and have without any doubt seen the lengths that this council has gone to for transparency. And you are very much aware of the limitations and issues that council has come across when attempting to release all information due to the various reasons, including commercial in confidence and the many other legal constraints that can be brought about by discussions in the public domain. This, whilst it may not have been intended, this motion is extremely loosely constructed. There was no reason attached nor any background as to why it was being presented, and frankly, I hate to say it, but I believe that it's a cheap political stunt. It's cleverly misleading, and I believe that is the intention of it. You've written all meetings, and I asked, what does that entail? Am I supposed to invite public into every meeting I choose to have in my office between the CEO, a staff member, a member of the public? Does it include meetings of the management? Are you anticipating that we live stream every conversation that occurs within this building in the depots? Perhaps, when, as Councillor Scommers said, when we do the tours, do we invite the people to come for a bus ride? I certainly hope that that's not the case. If it's only meetings that involve a quorum of elected councillors other than workshops, is that not already what we do? So I can only assume that it is the workshops that you're targeting. The one informal meeting opportunity that we have where staff and councillors can openly, frankly, and effectively discuss arising matters. It is not a decision-making forum. It is purely an information session that allows officers to understand the policy directions of the council when they're writing their reports. The Local Government Act nor the local government regulations have no requirement for this to occur, and to the best of my knowledge, no other council in the state does it. And there are very good reasons why. The Local Government Association of Queensland only last year vehemently opposed it and defeated this from occurring due to the many issues that it would create. They stated at the time that it would significantly hamper the council operations and make the public notice and reporting requirements drastically onerous and costly. Furthermore, provision would need to be made for any information that could be considered as commercial in confidence, prejudice or deliberative, investigative or other litigation process, legal professional privilege, or any other legal impediment that is not required to be released. Not to mention the tedious significance of possible misconduct of councillors erroneously making statements whilst trying to gain further information or advice on this topic from staff. I have no doubt that if this motion was to get up today, it would either be illegal at worst, immoral at base, and it would completely destroy the relationship that exists between councillors and staff to gain helpful decision-making information, and would also facilitate a major unnecessary financial cost to this council. If you want transparency, then I challenge you to accept an alternative motion which I am prepared to move. And that is that council, in the interest of transparency, requests the CEO to bring a report back to the August 21 Ordinary Council meeting outlining the requirements to implement the Building Douglas Committee as a regular part of this council's calendar. So I'm prepared to move that, and is there a seconder for it?
What's the Building Douglas Committee?
Well, Councillor Nolly, you've been at the meetings when we've discussed it. Is there a seconder for that? And then I can just bring it to the
I
table.
think that's a great idea.
Councillor Scomerson has seconded. The Building Douglas Committee is a standing committee formulated under the Local Government Act. It would have monthly meetings in which reports are presented to councils prior to the ordinary meeting. The public who are interested would be allowed to make a 3-minute deputation in front of the committee to give comment in support or opposition for the proposed recommendations. Councillors can then debate the report and recommend it either for adoption or at that meeting, or move it forward to a more formal ordinary meeting. This is real transparency in which the public can have an input to and councillors upon hearing feedback and gain valuable insights and recommend changes to the proposed actions or requests additional information before making a formalised decision. I know the councillors are familiar with the Building Douglas Committee, as we have spoken about bringing it forward prior, and a report from the CEO would allow the public to see in detail how such a committee would function, as well as the benefits that it would bring, including transparency. Anyone would like to speak against that motion?
I'd like to discuss whether it's for or against. There's a few questions I have about it.
So no one wishes to speak against it, then I'll open it up to discussion. Councillor Nolly, you wish to ask something?
Thank you. Now, I don't have the standing orders in front of me, but generally, any amendments to a motion cannot substantially change the motion. Now, that in itself, I don't have a big problem with, but it is definitely my understanding substantially changing the motion. So if that's brought as a mayoral minute perhaps in the next meeting, I think that would be great, no problems, and I'll be happy to discuss it. I don't believe technically it can be moved as an amendment to this motion, because to me that substantially changes the intent of this motion. Governance manager, is that correct?
The council Molly, you're referring to item 10, amendment of
Okay, yeah, I don't have
so 10.1, an amendment of the motion shall be in terms which maintain or further clarify the intent of the original motion, and 2, does not contradict the motion.
Yeah, so that to
Well,
me
the
is
intent to me is transparency.
Yeah, but it's very different. Just bring it as a amendment in the next meeting. Yeah.
Through the chair, my opinion, I don't have a problem, because I believe that the intent is still about transparency, and it doesn't contradict the original motion.
Because what we're after is openness, and we're after transparency in meetings.
No, what we're opening after is opening the workshops to the public. That's what the intent of that is. Let Councillor Zamataro express his intent of his motion.
Councillor Zamataro?
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to talk about the comments made by yourself and Councillor Thomas about, you know, the ridiculous comments actually about, do we want people to come on bus rides and meetings with CEOs? You are very well aware of my intention with this motion was that meetings and workshops were, so you were very well aware of that. And to use the terminology of a political stunt when a councillor is trying to move a motion displays very poor leadership, very poor chairing a meeting. The reason I haven't brought this up because about Car Report has enforced this, that we should be more open in council. And I'd just like to remind the 3 councillors that are against this, that their whole election campaign was based on transparency. You yourself, Mayor Kirk, we're going to introduce a Douglas Shire Council Transparency Code, which I haven't seen. So I'm surprised that one of you haven't moved this motion before today. I would expect this motion to be moved by one of you 3 councillors before today.
So are you arguing against the new motion, or?
I am arguing against the new motion because I presented a motion. I think you know the answer to that. I'm just not sure where you're trying to make me out to not know what I'm talking about, when in actual fact, all you've done is just made yourself look ridiculous with the stupid comments that were made.
Excuse me, Councillor Zamataro, this is a formal meeting,
Okay.
and I've asked you to apologise for those
I do
statements.
apologise for the comment. Okay, the comments you made were out of line. Comments were made by you, and were very clear that I did not mean bus rides and meetings with the CEO and meetings between me and Councillor Thomas. That's extremely clear.
With all due respect, your motion says the council, in the interest of transparency, pass a resolution that all meetings, including workshops. So that's not just workshops, that's all meetings.
That could have been very easily cleared up by simply omitting the word or meetings and just include it just for workshops. That could have been a discussion that we could have.
I'm more than happy.
It could have been just workshops, but, you know, it does read, pass a resolution at all meetings, so there's no explanation what all meetings are.
Yes, but we could discuss that here and now. As we did with your notice of motion last month, we discussed it, we tweaked it.
Okay, let's get back onto the standing orders.
Look, I'll
please.
just wait for the anticipation for the Douglas Shire Council Transparency Code to come into effect.
Right, well, we'll start by that, which I will bring a mayoral minute at the next meeting, which will request that, so I'll withdraw the alternative motion, which means we'll vote on the current motion as it stands.
You change it, make it more clear. Change it.
Why don't we do that then? We're talking about that last reason that all meetings, all council meetings and council workshops be open to the public.
Council workshops.
The council workshop, which is very clear. I mean, I think it's,
Well, you're welcome to make an alternative motion if you wish, but I think it's been made quite clear already that at this stage the workshops are what they are. So the alternative motion that you're presenting now is the council, in the interest of transparency, pass a resolution that all workshops be open to the public.
meetings and council workshops other than what's stated in the closed meeting related to government business.
So no changes.
Oh, council meetings and council workshops, yeah. Excluding bus trips. would you like to
Ordinary
add
council
that?
meetings, is that what you're
Ordinary
calling
council meetings.
it? Ordinary council, which are in,
Which
anyway.
are.
Yeah.
Do you have a seconder for the alternative motion?
Absolutely.
Councillor Norley? My arguments haven't changed, they're exactly the same. Anyone else wish to comment on that?
But the ordinary council meetings are open to public.
Okay. If that's the alternative motion, we shall put a vote on that. For all those in favour of the alternative motion, Councillor Zamatara, Councillor Nolly. So that motion fails. So we're back to the original motion. Councillor Kerr, Councillor Scomerson, Councillor McEwen. So the original motion now stands. Did you have any closing comments, Councillor Zamatara?
No, I think it's fine.
We'll put
Don't
it to
want to
the,
be taken out of context again.
put it to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Zamatara, Councillor Nolly. All those against? Councillor Scomerson, Councillor Kerr, Councillor McEwen. Not carried. And that concludes today's meeting. And we shall close the meeting at 11:08.
That's all.